Yes, thank you so very much for joining us. I am Dr. Adrian Daisley, certified national life coach and world peace ambassador. This evening, as well as Island Innovation Ambassador for the Island Innovation, today we are having an interesting conversation with a special guy. His name is Joseph Shidiak. And this evening, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about peripheral subjects. We're going to get straight into it. Joseph Shidiak holds a Bachelor's of Science in Biological Engineering, a Master's of Science in Horticultural from the University of Arkansas, as well as a Master's in Science in Molecular Biology from the Lebanese American University. Throughout his education, he was always involved and employed as a researcher, teaching assistant in various departments in which he's worked. He has been involved in research into high-tech horticultural practices, controlled environment, farming, vertical farming, and hydroponic systems. So we're going to have a really great conversation with him because I'm not sure about you, but I am interested to know more about hydroponic systems and vertical farming because of COVID-19. Joseph, we've been pushed to the point where we have to be creative. So my first question to you is, tell us first of all about yourself.
Well, I was born in Boston and grew up in the Middle East, in the UAE and Lebanon.
Boston,
and
okay.
and I was able to come back to the States here accidentally at the age of 16 as a refugee of all things. And the University of Arkansas was nice enough to let me in with in-state tuition, which is a big deal. So I was able to afford college education because of that. And they also gave me a job the entire ways at the department I was studying in. And so I started out wanting to be a musician and realized that I might keep it for fun and not ruin it by getting that degree. Also, my parents were not going to pay for music.
I understand. Are there, as it relates to your career, take us back. Take us back to the very beginning. How did you get started in science?
Sure. So every young person that you know basically knows one thing, and they want to help people. I have no idea how to do that. So I thought I would maybe become a doctor. And my first degree, biomedical engineering, is the same as my father. And I did that as pre-med. So during those years, I spoke with a lot of doctors, asked them every detail about their work and their lives, and determined that being a doctor in the US was not for me, not for my personality. So I proceeded to try to find a job in engineering at the time. And it was, well, that was basically 2011 and 12, terrible economy, and they were not hiring entry level. So I ended up going back to school in Lebanon and decided, I can help doctors, help people by giving them scientific information as a molecular biologist. Right. What I learned is that that industry is also suffering from some unfortunate challenges. Basically, the developments made are oftentimes not for everybody. They're for rich people. The devices that we invent or the medications that we produce are very, very expensive. And you can make a lot more progress outside of that industry, pharmaceuticals, than you can through it, I believe. So then I was lost for a little while. I got a job doing some farm work back here in Arkansas. And it was a friend who got me that work. And I very, very much enjoyed the benefits. I was going home with fresh strawberries and grapes and blueberries and things like this. I thought, right. This is better than health insurance. Yes. And I started to see that they have a lot of problems in agriculture, and that as an engineer, I was able to be helpful with those. So I was continuing to learn from my colleagues and my bosses about plants as I was helping them with their electronics and their plumbing and basic things like that. Right. Then a professor comes along and he sees me working hard, because I was working hard, and he says, how would you like to work for me in the greenhouses and hydroponics? I said, I've never heard of those things, but they sound fun. Let's do it. Yeah. Eventually, he said, you're doing good. Why don't we get you a master's degree in this? I said, are you going to pay for it? He said, yeah. So I did that as well. That was a pay cut, a lot of hard work. but I really enjoyed it. It was, fascinating to learn about what farmers go through and all the work and preparation that goes into making our food and all the waste that is kind of inherent in the system as well. Graduating from that degree, I went to Colorado and had a couple of jobs that didn't work out because of dishonest employers. I need to get paid for my work. And then eventually ended up starting my company, even though I had no entrepreneurial interest, really. I started my company because I believed that I knew how I wanted to approach the industry. And by the grace of God, that went very well. And I got my first few clients, and it just kind of spread from word of mouth. I've not once promoted myself or advertised. There's no point in doing that if your work speaks for itself. So that's the one thing that I prioritize, is making sure that I'm looking out for my clients and their benefit, because that in turn benefits their community.
Now you
Farmer is
chose
trying to help
to
people.
now you chose to become an island innovation ambassador. Why?
Well, I'm starting to develop a special relationship with the Caribbean, and in particular Barbados now, where we are co-ambassadors.
Yes.
My relationship with Barbados is short. It's about 3 months long, and I've
Okay.
had some of the best experiences in my life there, mostly involving. But larger than that, I'm currently involved in helping develop some of projects across the entire Caribbean. So with one group that I'm working with, we're building farms in the Caribbean that will be sustainable. And we've thought this through
Okay.
very, very closely according to the true definition of sustainability. Nothing in the
Yes.
future will get in the way of our continued operation. Not ourselves, not the economy, not the weather. They're hurricane
Yes.
proof. They are very sensible in terms of energy efficiency, because we want to be off-grid using renewables. So
Yes.
from the beginning, you have to minimize your requirement for energy. We're
Okay.
making sure that it's integrated into society, and we're not competing with anybody local. We're competing with
Very good.
foreigners, and we want to have training programs for Caribbeans so that they can stay and work and make a lot of money, so that young people can be interested in farming, since it's actually like a white-collar job now. There's no soil in what we do. There's water and
Yes.
gadgets.
Right. Right. Right.
So, in a nutshell, I've worked in Jamaica, Aruba, Trinidad, and Barbados, and I'm about to expand into other islands, and I very much care about their future.
Yes.
And because
Yes.
they're small, I think the problem is very much, the solution is temporary. Each place like the US, it's more difficult for one person or a small group to make a big difference. But in a small place, you can change the future very quickly,
Yes.
forever.
Yes. Now, it would be remiss of me not to ask you, what has your experience been like in Barbados?
Well, it's remarkable how different each island in the Caribbean is. Before going to that region, it's very easy to think it's a group of similar places. So Barbados is nothing like anywhere I've been before, but here's how I can describe it. It's good, but not very wild. It's developed, it's civilized, it's clean, it's organized. Everyone is very nice and polite,
Yes.
and anyone will have a great time there. You're not in danger, so don't get too excited.
Wow. Now, you said that you are not in Barbados at the moment. Where are you
True.
at the moment?
I'm in Arkansas in the USA. That's home of Walmart. I'm actually in their headquarter town, and this is where my wife is from. So I
Okay.
was
Okay.
diagnosed with cancer in Barbados while I was there, which threw a wrench in things. So I had to come back here to receive treatment, and as soon as the doctors are satisfied that it's going well, I'm back to work in Barbados.
Wow. Now, I'm not sure if you want to talk about that. What has
It's
that
up to you.
transition been like for you? The
Well,
transition.
first of all, the past year has been interesting for everybody. I was fortunate enough to have the majority of my work already be remote, so not much
Yeah.
changed at
Right.
first,
Right.
except for that. And then, I thought I had a lung infection. The first doctor I went to get a checkup before traveling said, "You have a lung infection. Great.
Yeah.
Take
Yes.
antifungals." Next doctor said, "You have a bacterial infection. Take antibiotics." So half of my time recently has been taken by this medical issue, and it was in Barbados. that a good, great surgeon found out the truth, so I can start
Yeah,
making progress.
Barbados, when it comes to health, Barbados is
Excellent
top.
doctors, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yes.
they're lacking some infrastructure. So they said, we don't have what we need to go further
Yeah,
here. We need to go back to
yeah.
the U.S. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, okay. And how long do you expect to stay in the U.S. before returning to Barbados?
It looks like I may be able to get back next month.
Okay, next month. All right. So as Providence would have it, you got involved in the Island Innovation Ambassador Program
Yes,
because of
indeed.
your love of innovation. Now, the Latin word for innovation is innovare, which means to make changes or to do something different.
That's right.
So, in your own words, what is innovation? We hear the term all the time. In your own words, what is innovation?
Well, innovation is a tool, and there's methodology behind it. Now, it's only necessary when things aren't working. If what you're doing is not working, then as you say, you need to change it. You need to change
Yes.
in a very purposeful way. To innovate means to make things new with a
Yes.
new goal using old information. So,
Very good.
so based
Very
on the
good.
past, we build the
Yes.
future using the present. And it only
Yes.
works if you're busy right now. Otherwise, no
now,
change will happen.
now, Joseph, many people say to me, Dr. Adrian, why do you talk to the older generation so much? The reason why is because I think that there is a chasm between our
Hmm.
generation and the older generation as it relates to knowledge and information.
Absolutely true.
And so when I heard about the island innovation, I got involved because I wanted to bridge the gap between the older generation, the younger generation, the political sphere as well as the social sphere, because we are all becoming digital nomads. When I first heard that term, I thought nomads. That sounds a bit ominous and away from reality. But the truth is that COVID-19 has presented many challenges for us in all sectors. How has COVID-19 affected your business or enhanced your business?
It has enhanced it because my business is essentially helping people plan the future of agriculture and overcome very site specific challenges that they have.
Okay.
And a lot of people have been thinking about getting into it for many years, or investing, or starting a farm, or things like this. Suddenly,
Right,
they're not
right.
thinking about it anymore. They're planning it. It,
Yes,
it went
yes,
from a good
yes,
idea to a physical necessity very quickly.
yes,
So
yes.
this is a great year for regenerative agriculture in the whole because of the logistical problems that current models are having. Current food
Okay,
system and agricultural sector are suffering gravely, and we simply cannot allow for this to happen again next time.
right,
So
right.
we're taking moves right now. It's very easy to convince people to do that.
Now you say about site initiatives. What are some of the site initiatives that you are talking about?
Well, to execute one of these projects successfully anywhere in the world, you need to have many things in place. You need a government that's interested and willing. At least, if they're not going to
Okay,
help, stay out of our way. Don't make it complicated for us to
yes,
help the population. You also want landholders who are locals. You want the farm to be seen as a local business and accepted as such, so locals have to be in ownership of it. And that's how we run our projects.
right,
Basically, I'm a foreigner everywhere except Lebanon and the USA. So when I'm abroad, I don't impose anything on anyone. I'm there to be useful and helpful, basically, and I'll get paid for my work and my contribution, which is a small portion of the value of the project once it gets going. So these farms that we're developing, for example, me and my colleagues, there's four of us on a team right now, we will get 1% of the farm revenue each. The rest of the 96% of that belongs to Caribbean investors and the local landholder and everything like that. So it makes them care about how well
of
it goes.
course,
Yeah.
of course.
And we have many of these. So we'll make a fine living doing what we're doing.
The initial question when it comes to bringing a project to government is always, all right, is it self-sustaining?
Hmm.
And I really like the fact that you talked about the project as and approaching it from the energy standpoint because I sat in many meetings and heard information about new initiatives, but the energy cost is never really at the forefront.
Yeah.
We're going to offer you this, but you're still going to have the energy output is going to be twice as much.
Mm.
And so, are you talking about solar integration in your projects?
Absolutely. We're doing solar and wind and geothermal integration depending on where you are and which resource is reliable,
Right,
or
right.
possibly more than one. But I'm also talking about the fact that hydroponics is already viewed as a very efficient form of agriculture.
All right.
And what that means is that a lot of people will stop there and say it's good enough. Well, it can be improved. Okay, so
Okay,
let's
okay.
say it's true that you use 90% less water and associated fertilizer and maybe even energy if we're talking about a greenhouse than traditional farming. But what if I took that conventional hydroponic system and reduced its uses by another 90%, which we've done? There's no reason not to do that. It makes it
Yes.
easier to put it off the grid, first of all. It makes it more attractive to investors and communities and governments and everyone. So this is what we've done. Moreover, we are really taking an approach of sustainability on multiple fronts. So not just environmental, but economic sustainability, ergonomic sustainability. So in our farms, we acknowledge that markets change. And a lot of farmers go out of business or face hardship because they're not able to pivot. They have infrastructure that was built for a very specific purpose. And if their customer changes their mind, they are not in good shape. So we made sure that the systems that we're deploying can grow whatever you need to grow very well. And that's what they're
Okay.
designed for. Not within, they're generalist systems, basically,
Right, right.
and efficient and all of that. And then ergonomically, we want to make sure that nobody actually gets hurt doing this job. There's a very, very low risk of that, but it's also a pleasant experience. And this is part of bridging the gap too, by the way. This is an area where I've seen amazing phenomena of teenagers and old people sharing in activities and sharing in everything else as they discuss. Because we have it basically at hip height, you can farm without ever bending over. You can farm without breaking your back. There's nothing that ever is too far away for you to reach. Make sure that you can have access to everything all times.
Okay. Now, what do we need to have an effective, workable hydroponic system? I know nothing about hydroponics.
That's okay.
So,
That's okay. So where it starts is soil, actually. Everyone knows that we grow things in soil, and I'll tell you why. Soil provides certain things to the plant. That is a physical support, darkness, oxygen, moisture, and nutrients. If we provide those things to the plant, then it literally does not need soil because that's all soil is doing. So in hydroponics, we provide those things to the plant without soil, usually in containers of some shape.
okay.
And we provide physical support, we provide oxygen and water and nutrients and darkness to the roots. So it's a root management system. It's very simple. It's irrigation 2.0.
Okay.
And I just want to comment on the unsustainable part of hydroponics right now is the
Please go ahead.
fertilizer. The
Yes.
fertilizer. Currently, the most cost-effective and effective fertilizers are mined salts. And this is something we have to stop using in the future, probably very soon. So there's a movement to turn hydroponics into organics in a sense, but that can't be done directly. Hydroponics, you can't put organic fertilizers in there because it essentially becomes a compost pile then. So then you have microbes competing for oxygen with your plants because they're doing a job of breaking things down. So what's going to emerge in the next few years is a global economy of basically organic material recapture. So any food waste, any agricultural waste will go to localized facilities, be digested, and then you will have organically derived fertilizers for hydroponics, which is fully digested and sterilized and ready for use. Then we complete the cycle.
Okay, thank you so very much for that elaborate explanation. I want to I want to talk now about our economy. And we hear the word sustainability all the time. Most politicians use it. I think it was in 1990s that I started to hear that word in the
Yes.
mouths. Now we have pivoting. I always write down the words that I hear in the mouths of our generation. I want to ask you, from your perspective, how do we, as a country, as a people, become more sustainable in the businesses we start, in the things that we do?
So we're talking about Barbados, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Barbados has
Barbados
immense,
first.
yes, Barbados first, and then others will follow. Barbados has immense potential to become more sustainable as an economy, basically. And the first area is that it needs to become less reliant on tourism, strictly, resort tourism. And this is made very obvious. I mean, first of all, it's about 35% of the economy, which is significant. It's not the majority, but it's significant. And so when we were there, we saw about 35% of people suffering more than usual because their income is gone, and that makes them desperate, and that increases crime. And some of the crime includes stealing from farmers. Hungry people steal from farmers. And then some of those farmers decide to stop farming. And then they stop producing food, and they have to import more, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. So I'm very proud of the energy initiatives going on, the incentives for solar, and I think that should continue. For wind, that should expand it to any form of renewable energy and make sure that, there's no negative incentive to do that. If you have money, then it's a good return on investment for you. That should be well integrated with any new plans of building anything. I know they're thinking about rebuilding Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and some of the university campuses are going to add. These need to be built with the future in mind. So renewable energy becomes kind of a built-in feature for everything from now on. And then there's the food industry, essentially, which I've been told, actually I heard the Minister of Agriculture say, it's on the brink of collapse. Because the soil in Barbados is very, very shallow. It's very low quality. The rain is, in many cases, excessive, washing away the fertility. And you have monkeys and so many other pests, and basically farming is a nightmare there. But it's essential to autonomy. So we need to increase our farming activities, and there are many, many good people who have tried. There's several hydroponic farms in Barbados right now that are unfortunately failing to expand.
Before you continue, I would like
No
for
problem.
us to go back and look at our tourism system.
Sure.
Because you said 35% of our GDP comes from tourism.
Yes.
And I want to find out then, if not this, what? We have unmovable systems in place that has
I'm not
become a
going to
part of
shut
our
down.
culture.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's good reason for that. It's a gorgeous country. And we have the most pristine beaches. The first day we were there, we saw sea turtles. I mean, baby
Wow.
ones on the shore. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was magical. So that's
yeah.
not going to go away, but it can change. So a current existing resort in Barbados is most likely foreign owned, possibly even employing a lot of foreigners in every administrative role, and getting all of their supplies and materials and food from abroad also. It virtually doesn't benefit the country at all. So you don't have to change the amount of tourism to change the positive impact of tourism on the local economy, meaning the cash in locals' pockets.
Okay.
So that brings us to farming again, because if we successfully tip the scales of food imports versus exports, Barbados has every ability to export food in the net and provide for itself.
Yes.
So if the food provided to a resort that tourists are going to and paying for and everything comes from a local farm run by a local who's getting his salary there, it makes a big dent. You can change the percentage of money that people spend in Barbados that stays in Barbados. And that is something that needs to happen immediately. And it's not just agriculture, but there's so much potential to create, cosmetics and soap and many, many other value-added products. Everything the hotel uses, basically.
Yes. So how do we change the mentality of the general masses as it relates to what is produced here and the value that it has versus something that is produced in France? I in my initial stages, I was a chef at a hotel,
Yeah,
and we imported all of our produce from France, directly from France. And
interesting.
I remember thinking to myself, like, obviously, French cheese has to be better than Barbadian cheese.
Okay,
Um, I mean, as it relates to the taste and,
right.
and, and what's not, it is very different. However, the cost, you have cost control issues because you think that it has to come from abroad to have value. Um, so, how do you think we can change the mentality as it relates to that, the general
Well,
masses?
first of all, the customer is king. If your client insists that something be the case, then it's the case. But if
Which
that's
is
not the
usually the
case,
case.
right, right, and this is not my specialty, moreover, but at the same time, this is going to take a national campaign, a bit of advertising, Barbados pride, you know, and some demonstrations. So
Yeah.
one of my favorite things is speaking with chefs, because imagine you're working at this restaurant and you're getting certain things from France. I come in one day and I bring you an alternative, and I say, please sample this, and you say, I can't tell the difference between this and the stuff from France, but you're telling me it's local and maybe cheaper. You, the chef, knows that the customer is not going to know the difference, and you may decide to either make that switch kind of quietly and then announce it later once everyone has given you good feedback. Or you might say to everybody, to the clients, we've just made a big change. We are proudly providing Barbados produce here, and we can assure you that we've made sure that it's the same quality or better.
Yes.
And
Back
then,
in,
yeah,
go ahead, go ahead. You have
no,
another.
if your customers complain, then you have to go back to the French stuff. But if nobody does, then you just made a big change for the better, and you never have to go back to foreignly produced. Again, no benefit to anybody working in your country. A big carbon footprint through transport. Nothing needs to move across the world if it doesn't need to, and we need to better define what we need versus want and what we're able to do under the circumstances.
Now, a few years back, before I had left Barbados, we had this Buy Bajan campaign, and it was geared towards, because we have the single market economy, and looking at creating a
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean block for trading and importation and exportation, which is a fantastic idea. And the
Yes,
system, the structural system is above par.
excellent.
And yes, we have globalization, and globalization has made it necessary for us to look at how my actions in my small country is affecting other countries. But I do believe, Joseph, because of COVID-19, we're going to have to go back to that structure, that idea. How can I make my country next door, my neighbor, happy, and how can they make me happy? Tourism is not my area. I stay within my lane. But because of COVID-19, these issues are spilling over into
Mm,
our areas of expertise and
absolutely.
interest. And so we can't stay on the fence and say, well, I didn't study that, so I can't speak to it. I do a lot of reading, and some of the things that I read about show me that we're on the crossroads. Humanity is on the crossroads as
Very,
we
very much.
speak. And if we don't network, if we don't communicate, if we don't integrate, we are going to lose our economies.
Yes.
And when I read your bio and I saw the things that you were involved in, I said, no, we definitely have to have this guy because I want to find out what are some of those innovative ideas, you know, that are out there that you have seen that you think will benefit Barbados, and of course, from a non-consultant standpoint.
Uh, well, it's tricky. Everything is interrelated now, and consulting is almost a bad word, but it's incredibly important. So I'm going to give you a real life example of how things in Barbados can improve, how we can back up these campaigns of buy Bajan, for example.
Yes.
When I was in Barbados and when I return, I make every effort to prefer and buy things made there when I can. So in the case of plantain chips, for example, you go to Massey's supermarket and you see Bajan plantain chips, and you see others from Costa Rica and chips from Trinidad and stuff like this. So I bought the Bajan ones. They were not very good. They were not very good. Okay, so even someone like me who's trying to make a point of this, I buy them. They're not very good. I get the Costa Rica ones. They're excellent. Okay, so now matching that quality or exceeding it is the goal. And if the people currently in the position of producing it in Barbados are not able to, then they need help. This is where a consultant comes in, very temporarily, to figure that out and get them on the right track so that they can compete. Because nobody's giving things away for free. You have to earn your business. You have to back it up with quality. So my example that I'm using is Lebanon. Lebanon is a small country. It's not an island, but it might as well be because you can't go to Israel, you can't go to Syria. So it's a border. It's like an ocean. And the economy is doing terribly for many, many reasons, and COVID doesn't help. So there's international organizations that send consultants with various specialties. And that brings me back to my business. My first thing I did when I started my business was accept a volunteering assignment with the USAID to Lebanon. So all expense paid. They didn't pay me, but they paid my expenses. I got to go see my family and my friends and work with hydroponic farmers in Lebanon. I didn't know they existed, so I was happy to find out. And they exist, and they have a lot of problems. I was able to practice my skills in helping them overcome the next challenge to make more money doing less, or so on and so forth. So that could be very, very effective. And companies in Barbados need to be open for this. They may even need to ask for it. Say, listen, we are having a hard time competing with our competition that may be regional or foreign or whatever, and we want to overcome this. They can ask the government, please hire a specialist to come help us get in better shape so that the locals who want to support us can do so satisfactorily.
No, I take your point about the plantain chips. But I don't want to generalize Caribbean products that are maybe better because you've not had the experience of eating all the Caribbean products, just
No,
plantain
that's true.
chips.
That's true, and it's a matter of taste.
So let's stay away from the generalization. Just use that case sensitive situation and say, well, plantain chips, because there are so many other things in Barbados that are great.
Yes,
I have,
rum.
yeah, rum. Exactly. Exactly. Um, when I was in Brazil, Joseph, I saw the value of Barbados. When I was living in Barbados, I did, and I think it is when you travel abroad outside of your country, you meet people who see the value in where you come from, and it
Yes,
causes you to appreciate. I have a friend, for example, who's from Lebanon. He's been living in Brazil for 40 years,
yes.
right? And he always tells me about Lebanon and says to me, you have to visit Lebanon. Apart from the social unrest and what's not, because he gives me this point by
Yeah,
point idea of how it is there. He says, it's not an easy place to live.
true.
Um, so what I want to ask you now, then, Joseph, you gave a recommendation about how tourism can get better. What kind of partnerships can we create that can help us wade through these murky waters of COVID-19?
There's a lot of partnerships, and it takes a little bit of bravery and precaution. So the automatic response is shut yourself up and don't go anywhere and don't talk to anybody. Basically, what I'm trying to say is a lot of tourists to the Caribbean don't experience the Caribbean. My friends that have been to Jamaica for tourism had an entirely different experience than I did, and me and my wife, because they went to an all-exclusive resort, and I went to stay with friends while I was working. And that's something that has to end right now. All-inclusive resorts should probably just be illegal. Okay? Instead, you
That's a
have
good point,
potentials to,
actually.
yeah, you can partner with so many other businesses and do it responsibly and safely, even in COVID times. So why not frame the Caribbean for what it really has to offer you, which is nature, right? People go there for the nature, and they're talking about the beach. But the beach is not the only thing going on, and suntanning and swimming is not the only thing you can do at the beach. So purposefully and in a structured way, expand this experience. That will actually give you, as a resort, let's say, an edge over your competition. But you have packages where you send your patrons to the farm where breakfast came from, or to the botanical garden where they will be so relaxed they'll never forget it. Or say on the beach today we have a program where the turtle specialists are coming down to make a demonstration. These companies don't have anything to do with each other. They don't share anything, but they will all benefit from it. The resort would look very, very good for partnering with nonprofits and local businesses and farms and so on and so forth. They would get better customers. They could raise their prices. They're saying, what we're doing is benefiting Barbados. Choose us. That's the place to start. And then guess what? Your competition jumps on board, starts doing the same thing out of the need to compete, and suddenly everybody wins.
I really like your analogy and analysis. Let's talk now about innovative ideas.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges that you have come up against, whether it's in government, whether it's in the mentality of people, towards innovative ideas?
It's always challenging, no matter what kind of innovations you're involved in any sector. There's always distrust and anxiety and things like that
Stress.
that follow it. So people will say, what you're trying to do sounds impossible. I'm not interested. A lot of people have told us that what we've actually already done can't be done. I love that. I love that. I say, just watch. uh, yeah.
I like when we are challenged and we're told as a
Yes.
small island or a person or a professional, oh, you shouldn't do something because it's never been done before. I am a believer that we need to encourage our generation to do things that have never been done before.
The
Because
only
if
way.
you yeah, if you think about it, Joseph, all of those people who become our heroes have done something that has never been done before and has received those same comments. You shouldn't try it. This person tried and failed. Just because it didn't work for one country doesn't mean it wouldn't work for us. The problem is that we
Amen.
have so many analyzers, we have so many consultants that we are stuck in analysis. We're stuck in, you know, maybe we shouldn't try it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that innovation has a piece of outside thinking to
Hmm.
make it innovative. You know, I, I believe that we need to look at, what made, Thomas Edison and these kind of people, Nikola Tesla,
Yeah.
great. These are people I studied because I'm like, I mean, study their minds.
Right.
Why were they above their peers in their way of having innovative ideas? A
Yeah.
man went, a scientist went out and an apple fell on his head, and he got he got an entire concept, mathematic concept.
Right.
And so, how can we, as a coach, I always ask, Joseph, how can we as people step out of the box? When you learn science, or you are taught to stay within that framework. but how can we step slightly outside of the framework and find solutions for our countries? Those are the questions. That's why I brought you on. These are the questions I would like us to answer for the general public.
Sure. Well, I think you may agree with me based on what you've been saying, because I firmly believe that that is done through exposure. And so exposure is defined as basically finding yourself in a situation where you have to deal with things that normally you wouldn't. So going to school is exposure to peers that you would, you have a classroom of people who maybe you wouldn't ever hang out with, but you're forced to interact with them. Actually, you're paying to interact with them. The teachers, each one leaves a trace on you, and you get to hear their perspective. You get to take what you want from it, add it to the rest, and carry on. So you are an amalgamation of everyone that's contributed to you, positive and negative and neutral, right? And travel is priceless. It's the best investment in the world, I would say. Going to a place where you know nothing about anything. And then it's that experience of every single thing you're looking at and listening to and is new. You expand as a person.
Yes.
And furthermore, upbringing. Upbringing is just one of the most important things in the world. It's the nurture that overcomes your nature, in a sense. So you can change the world in one generation by training a whole group of kids to think and behave a certain way, or to learn a certain way, because they're going to think how they want to think. But you train them with the tools on how to get somewhere.
I really like your last point about training and thinking, because I do believe that we have created a generation of non-thinkers.
On purpose.
On purpose, because the perpetuation of knowledge has been more about regurgitation,
Yes.
rather than let me spit this out and reconfigure it,
Yes.
put it back in the process, and then pass it on. I mean, sounds a bit gross, but
No, it's fine.
the reality is, Joseph, that we need to find ways where we can be part of international think tanks.
Yes.
I say to persons, when you watch the United Nations conversations, they are a part of many think tanks. And because of that information, they can transform one idea, because they're sitting on the board with 15 different countries,
Yeah.
who have 20 different consultants. That's 250 consultants that are putting their ideas. So when I am a part of a group of different thinkers, it was grown and developed in Brazil for me. It is priceless to be in
Yes.
an international environment where you are challenged to think differently. So I really love our conversation. Um,
This is why we're part of the Island Innovation Ambassador Group
yes,
as
we
well.
are.
Because we want to
Yes,
expose
yes.
ourselves in an innocent way to many different people who think differently from us and have
Yes.
different backgrounds, so that everybody learns and walks away with more and is better prepared to tackle the challenges that are in front of us.
My first meeting with the Island Innovation team made me aware of, first of all, how small we are alone and how big we are together.
No
If
joke.
we really want to make a global impact, we need to team up with others. And so, we really have to give praise to James Ellsmore for the work that he and his team is doing. If you are not a part of it, you don't really understand it until you become a part of it and you start to follow. You realize these guys are doing phenomenal work and bringing phenomenal people together. My sister's having a ball.
Glad she's happy.
Yeah. So, what kind of social initiatives do you think we need to look at to become more self-sufficient? Social initiatives,
Well, I
apart
think
from
there's,
island innovation, because
yeah.
that's one of.
Well, there's a lot of, industry-specific groups and platforms, and social media now is quite well developed. Basically, it's over the first generation, I would say. So what we see now is, for the first time in history, true potential for globalization. And what that means to me is that the ability to communicate with anybody, anywhere, directly, which means that we need fewer and fewer middlemen to tell us what's going on with other people. If I want to know what's going on in China, I will call my Chinese friend. I'm not going to turn on the news. Okay, so institutions that have held power for a long time are losing it inherently because we don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
So the current paradigm is in a state of, well, it's crumbling. And maybe it deserves to collapse because we will build it better. And simple conversations like this and in private usually come to fruition in some form. Either, it lends itself to someone coming up with an idea that, nothing comes from nowhere. Every good idea, again, is someone's unique brain putting together pieces that they picked up from elsewhere. So we just continue doing what we're doing and involving more and more people. You got to be a global citizen. Expand your circle, and the wider it gets, the more potential you have.
Wow. No, that's great, and that's powerful. We are witnessing the decentralization of information, the decentralization of health. I have been inundated with information about how much our world is changing. We are not going to be, in 10 years' time, every single sector is going to be different. And I think that what is happening is that we have persons who are trying to hold on to the old ways, the old way of thinking, the old way of reasoning, and we're going to have a different kind of thinking to come up with new solutions. And that's why I'm so happy to be part of the Island Innovation team.
Agreed.
And I want to say thank you so very much for joining me on this, wonderful conversation. We have a few more questions for you. Now, to maintain capacity in innovation, what are some of the things that you think are necessary for us to maintain capacity in innovation? We get started, but for some reason, we stop. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a process that takes constant encouragement, which is probably something that the likes of Tesla never had. That's what makes him remarkable, because he was striking forward despite, no pleasant wishes from anybody at the time. But there are things that governments, non-governmental organizations, universities, even kindergarten schools can do to support this, to encourage it.
Yes.
Money, time, space, people, contributions to encourage this are vital to the next generation thinking that innovation is essential to their daily life.
Yes.
And conservation can be good when it's something worth conserving. But if you're trying to hold on to something that's not working, we're going to leave you behind. And we don't want to leave you out of the equation. You can join us anytime you feel like it, but we ask your client to get out of the way, and we'll show you what's possible. And then you'll be inspired.
Now, we have to, how can we affect education and make educators aware not only of the power that they have to change their environment, but how can they start helping young people to be thinkers?
Well, first of all, I would say most of the best teachers are already very innovative. They're very brave, basically. They're often willing to go against the system that you described as training for regurgitation, and they know they have an impact. That's why they take their job seriously. That's why they put up with it for low pay.
Yeah.
So you want more of those individuals with that kind of potential to get into that kind of role. Let's start treating education like it should be treated. In other words, doctors and teachers are equally important to society. Maybe they should get paid the same. So if a teacher at a school earned $100,000 a year, US dollars a year, and were very selectively hired for that personality type of someone who wants this job badly because they care about their impact on the kids that they're serving, everything will change quite quickly, because I'll never forget the best teachers I had, or the worst teachers I had. I'll never forget them. And both of them
Yes.
molded me.
Yeah.
So there's tremendous power there. It's a critical moment where, you can create a hero or a criminal by influencing them.
Just wow. That's a mouthful that you've just
Yes.
given to us. I read somewhere about differentiated integrative innovation concepts,
Okay.
and when I was going through the information, this would have been about 3 weeks ago, because I've been thinking about how can we have innovative conversations that isn't only scientific. How
Hmm.
can I take science and apply it to my daily life in the context of this program?
Hmm.
And for those of you joining us at this moment, I'm Dr. Adrian Daisley, and you're on Dr. Daisley Speaks on 246 BajanVibesRadio.com. And this program was created so that we can share life skills, education, and to connect the world with the stories of leaders in their own right. And so today we're talking to Joseph Shidiak. And every time I say that name, I pause to make sure I'm saying it correctly. Um, Joseph, do you have any final words for our audience? What about young persons who want to get involved in your area?
Well, my final words would just be to never stop dreaming and never stop doing something about it. Dreaming plus action equals a better future. And either
Yes.
one of those is missing. If you're just acting without dreaming, you're going in circles. And if you're dreaming without acting, you're staying in place. So if you genuinely want to help the world, open your eyes, look around, find a problem that suits your skills, and get to work.
And I would like to say on closing, gentlemen, that one thing I have learned is there are two things that are necessary for us to grow as professionals: seasons and timing. And we go and we learn, we go to university, we study, whatever, through whatever form we can. But then there's timing and there's seasons. We who've done research, for example, to get into our areas, know that timing is important, and the season of if that information is relevant. We're living in a world right now where information has become irrelevant because it's only information. How can we take the information around us and make it necessary so that our generation can say, I want to read that book, or I want to understand this subject. I have young people who say to me all the time, why do I need to? I have Google, I have YouTube, and these are great initiatives, but they're not creating thinkers.
No. You have to have the initiative. You have to want it, and you have to be very discerning nowadays more than ever, because it's the age of information. Acquiring information is not the problem. It's acquiring accurate and useful information, like you said, and using it in the right place at the right time. So back to universities, for example. Universities don't sell knowledge. They don't. They sell credit. That's why
Yes.
you pay them. It's to certify
Yeah.
that you know the
Yes.
things you know. But anybody can learn anything they want for free. You just have to be aware of incentives. When you go online to look something up, you will find multiple versions of the story, no matter what you're looking up. And you have to ask yourself, first of all, do I see a consensus here? And what are the incentives of the parties that are providing this information to me? So, for example, if you look up hydroponics, tell me about, I want to learn about hydroponics. The first thing you will see on Google is a website from a company that paid a lot of money to Google for them to show you them first. And when you get in there, their educational program is devised to get you to buy things from them. So you know that information is geared towards that. Scroll down a bit farther and find a website that sells nothing. And guess what? Their information is going to be more impartial. So unfortunately, you have to do more digging than you used to. And you have to pay attention to the fact that Many people have incentives to mislead you. And that's okay. That's their business. Your job is not to be misled and to learn properly. And that takes work. That's why you have to want it. Nobody works for no reason.
Thank you so, wow.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for the
very
opportunity.
much,
This is my first time, Dr.
Yeah,
Daisley.
yeah, it's your first time, but it's not going to be the last. I promise you. I
No,
promise.
but
I
I'm
promise.
telling you, you have an achievement here. I've turned down every offer for something like this in the past, and I decided I should probably get started now.
No, thank you so very much. When we were preparing for the segment, I thought long and hard who would be best to be on the program. We have four other persons, but I wanted to have a person now who was not only knowledgeable, but who is also open in their thinking about the issues, because we need a different kind of thinking to approach the issues that we have upcoming. Haven't even spoken really about COVID. And so you'll be back, most definitely. I'm
That's
Dr.
fine.
Adrian, and you're on Dr. Daisley Speaks, myself and Joseph Chidiak this evening. Any final words?
Well, now I know the show exists. I'll be listening.
Thank you so very much. I'll send you the link afterwards, and you've really graced us with your presence and shared some valuable information. And guys, that's what we want, valuable information.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
very
Doctor.
much. Cheers.